Hi guys, this is Miss Johnson here. Today we're going to be learning about landforms, the different types of landforms on our Earth. And we're going to be demonstrating those different landforms later on in the lesson by using shaving cream with a fun activity to create our own. Okay, so today I said we were going to learn about landforms, and there are many different types. But before we get started with introducing those, can anybody tell me what they think is a landform? Does anybody have any idea? Okay, so a landform is a natural feature on Earth's surface. So some landforms we are going to talk about today are mountains, hills, plateaus, and plains. And some of these you may have already heard about, like mountains and hills. Those are both of those are common landforms that we hear about every day almost, or every other, once in a while. And then some of them are like plateaus and plains are not going to be something that you normally hear, like words that you hear to describe parts of land. But we are going to be learning about those formal landforms, the names, and some of them, like I said, you've already heard about them before, some of the names, and some of them you've not, and we're going to learn about those today. After talking about each landform, like I said, we're going to create our own landforms with a fun activity, but we'll get to that in just a minute. So first, I want to review what each landform is and how to describe it, what makes it that landform, why each landform is that. So mountains are all over the earth. Like we know, a lot of us know already, there are many types of mountains, many places that have mountains, and they all have different names. They all look different. Even though they all might look different, mountains have one characteristic or one thing about them that are the same. Mountains are most likely all very tall formations that are pointed at the top. Just like in this picture right here, you can see that mountains, or if you've heard of this term, mountains have peaks. So mountain peaks. They have pointed tops. You can see that in the picture. And then they also have really steep sides. So like if you go hiking on a mountain with your family or friends or whoever, if you get all the way to the very top and you look down, it's a very big drop off, right? So that's what steep sides mean. There's a very deep and steep drop off if you're at the very top. So some people, like I said, like to hike up mountains for fun, to see different kinds of nature, plants, and other things, animals, just things like that. So mountains, again, are very tall landforms, and they are very steep, and they have pointed tops, just like in that picture, okay? Number two, are hills, okay? So hills are a very common and frequently seen landform. Just like mountains, they're all over the earth, and depending on where you live, you may see them on a daily. So a lot of times, if you live out in the country where there's not a lot of businesses, like if you live in the city where there's a bunch of buildings that are surround you, if people live out in the country, they might have hills. Hills are smaller than mountains. They have a rounded top, just like in this picture. They're not as steep. They don't have a point. They are rounded at the top, instead of being pointed like mountains, and they're gently sloped. They're gently sloped, so that if you get to the top of a hill and you look down, it's not such a steep drop off, like a vast drop off. It's going to be a slope. Okay, so it's it's not pointed at the top. It's just a rounded top of the hill. Okay, this means they aren't as steep, which makes them safer to walk on. Okay, so if you went to hike at a mountain with your family, sometimes we have to be really, really careful on mountains because they are so steep and tall, and they have really deep drop-offs. But on hills, like in this picture, if you were at the very top of this hill, maybe where these trees are at, most likely if you were to trip, it's not going to be as dangerous because it's not such a steep and tall drop-off. Okay, so they're rounded. Hills are rounded. They're not as tall. They're smaller than mountains. Okay, and then they are gently sloped, meaning they don't have such a a tall, steep drop off, okay? All right, so plateaus. Now, this is something you may not have heard as much as mountains or hills, the names of them. And a lot of times, especially where we live here in North Carolina, there's not very many plateaus that I'm aware of. So places that have plateaus are a lot of times are out in like what this picture shows, maybe the desert. So plateaus are a very large raised area of land that is mostly flat on top, much like a table. Okay, so it's still tall like a mountain, maybe not as tall as a mountain, but it's flat on top. So it does not have a peak like this. It's completely flat on top. Okay, so because of this, because they are flat, they are sometimes, some people call them tablelands. Okay, so that looks like a table out in the middle of wherever they're at on the earth. Okay, so it's a flat top. So some people may call them tablelands. Okay, while they sit up high like mountains, they do not have pointed peaks. Like I said, they are completely flat on top. They don't have points at the top. Okay. For number 4 are plains. Now this is another word that you may not hear a lot being used, because sometimes we don't use this word. Like, it's a landform that is very common, but we don't normally call it a plain on a day-to-day basis. Okay, so a plain is a large, wide area of mostly flat land. They are one of the most common landforms on Earth, usually sitting at a low elevation, meaning it's not super high, it's very flat to the ground. Okay, and are usually fantastic spots for farming, building cities, and supporting lots of wildlife. So if you can see on this picture, I don't know if you can see it because there's kind of a glare, but it is a very flat area of land. Okay, so plains are normally what you're going to see when you walk out your front door. It may not, if you live in the country, maybe not maybe in a city where there's a bunch of businesses and stuff, but if you live where there's a very big, wide open land spaces where there's not really much built around it, maybe if your family has a cow farm and there's pastures of cows, that would be considered a plain, where there's not a lot of trees, there's not a lot of buildings or anything, houses, anything like that. It's very wide open and flat ground. Okay, like in this picture, you don't see a lot of things around this area, so it's just flat pretty much. It's not completely flat. There might be some little bumps and holes or whatever here and there, but it's completely wide open, and it's great for, a lot of times farmers use what plains are called to farm for vegetables, anything like that, crops. Okay, so now we are going to get to our landform activity. So what you're going to need, the materials you're going to need, is a spoon, a plastic spoon, or if you have a plastic knife and you would like to use that better, it might spread a little bit better, but either one will work. And then I want you to have an individual plate for each landform. So I just have some small little paper plates here. I have 4 of those because we're going to be doing 4 landforms. Okay, and then I have some paper towels because shaving cream can get kind of messy. So you might want to have those on hand. And then I have a can of shaving cream. So if you've never used shaving cream before, which we're in elementary school, so you probably haven't used this quite a lot, but maybe your parents do. It will come out very fast if you squeeze it. So we don't need a ton, but we will need a good amount for each landform. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit all of my plates out individually. So I have each plate by itself. Okay. And then I'm going to take my spoon and I'm just going to sit it to the side for a second. And I am going to do one landform at a time. That way that if something happens and your shaving cream goes flat, that way we can spread it and we can make our landforms how they're supposed to be. So only do one landform at a time. We're going to start with number 1, which was our mountain. Okay, so we are remembering that we need